My name is Tyler, and I'm currently studying abroad in London for my second semester at Boston University. I've really enjoyed living in this wildly diverse city, and I feel very lucky to have the chance to study here. London has an extensive history and is full of incredible museums, parks, and monuments, which I've used to my advantage. In my rhetoric class, we have recently been discussing war, specifically World War I, and its many transformative effects on European culture and society. I chose to focus on the representation of women involved in the war effort and how their lives have or have not improved as a result of the war. In my readings, I've discovered how complicated female empowerment during wartime really was and how people have been misled to believe that World War I was a time for progress in gender equality. First, I will be comparing monuments of two female scientists, Florence Nightingale and Edith Cavell. The two monuments were erected at very different periods in European history, one before World War I and one after in 1920. I will be comparing the tone and details of each statue and how they differently express European society's view of women at the time. Lastly, I will be looking at two different posters from the Imperial War Museum which represent men and women very differently, reflecting their assumed roles in society. Using my interpretation of the exhibit's representation of women, I will try to understand how women are viewed in society today. This is the monumental statue of the Revolutionary nurse Florence Nightingale. It is part of the Crimean War Memorial located on an island separating traffic along Waterloo Place. Her statue was erected before the start of World War I in 1914. A life-size figure of Nightingale stands on top of a carved block of granite, and on each side of its four sides, there is a scene displaying Nightingale's various accomplishments. Two of the four scenes show Nightingale as a nurse, caring for wounded soldiers during the Crimean War. The other two scenes are a mystery without context, and there is no writing anywhere on the monument other than her name, birth, and death date. Florence Nightingale was an extremely accomplished woman, especially for her time. She wrote a book on her medical research and nursing titled Notes on Nursing, which is still used today, and she developed the first nursing school, which was an extremely empowering opportunity for women at the time. By not highlighting these accomplishments, Florence Nightingale's memory is focused on her work as a nurse during the Crimean War. In her article, Women's Science and Suffrage in World War I, Patricia Farah brings up the unfair pattern of women being historically recognized for their subordinate roles, such as nurses. Nightingale was more than a nurse, but also a scientist who revolutionized nursing, and this monument does not highlight that. Her statue's body language doesn't represent Nightingale as a powerful figure, which also undermines her progressive accomplishments. She is slightly slouched and has a solemn, blank expression. This reminded me of the way the Virgin Mary, Mother of Christ, is often portrayed in paintings and statues. This portrayal of Nightingale as a passive motherly figure reflects the assumed roles of women as housewives. Major progress towards gender equality apparently occurred during World War I, and Edith Cavell's monument does reflect a level of progress in female empowerment that resulted following the end of the war. Cavell's statue is located alone on another island, separating traffic along St. Martin's Place. The monument was erected 2 years after World War I in October of 1920. Her figure is much larger and taller than Nightingale's, and her body language reflects power and bravery. Cavell's facial expression is much more direct, making her appear confident and capable. Behind her is another pillar, with the words humanity boldly engraved above her head. As you walk around the monument, devotion, fortitude, and sacrifice are also engraved on the pillar. These big words hold great significance and emphasize Cavell as a symbol of patriotism. This is a much more impressive monument compared to Nightingale's, reflecting that some progress for female representation was made during World War I. The viewer gets a sense that Cavell was more than a nurse, but a war hero who faithfully served her country during a time of desperate need. This statue definitely reflects Farah's point on page 136. Many people believed, and still do, that the war represented a dramatic break with the past, liberating women by enabling them to work and giving the vote to those over 30. In reality, only a tiny minority were enabled to act and think with anything even approaching the freedom of a man. Preceding the war, women were held back by scientific theories inspired by Darwinism, which indicated, among other things, that a woman's role in society was to raise children. Opportunities emerged as the need for volunteers in the war effort increased, but women were still marginalized in their efforts to help. As I walked through the Imperial War Museum, I noticed how World War I propaganda helped remind society of the established gender roles, depicting women as victims and men as heroes. This image reflects the roles and expectations of men at the time. The father is being asked by his daughter, Daddy, what did you do in the Great War? The son in this poster is playing with toy soldiers on the ground. Men were pressured to enlist, and their role in the war effort was to fight. Propaganda also used the assumed motherly roles of women to encourage men to enlist in order to save them. In this poster, a woman and her newborn are drowning as a result of the sinking of the Lusitania. Men are supposed to look at this picture and feel motivated to save the helpless women and children in distress. The deep understanding of a woman's supposed role in the household continued after the end of the war, and women are still facing discrimination today. For the past few weeks, I have been learning about how the world's understanding of women is often misunderstood to be progressive during wartime. Even though women received the right to vote during the end of World War I, that did not mean women were considered equal members in society. Understanding women's historical role in society is important in understanding where women's status lies today. This experiential learning process has been very valuable to me since I have been able to interpret many different texts, monuments, and historical items in order to come to my understanding of women's place in society. I have come to the conclusion that while women have and continue to make progress, there is still a long way to go for society to achieve total gender equality.